Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's episode of Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I'm so excited to talk to Liz Earnshaw today. We are going to talk everything relationships. I've been following her on social media. I recently connected with her tribe, giving some tips and tools to have the ultimate relationship. And she's going to be here sharing all of her wisdom with you guys today. So Liz, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and tell us more about yourself, how you show up in the world, your journey of how you got to what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I am Liz Earnshaw. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm also a certified Gottman therapist. So a lot of the work I do is informed by the Gottman method. I run a private practice in the Philadelphia area with a few locations, and we support people in having healthier relationships with themselves and other people. It's a huge passion of mine. And the way that I got where I am now is a funny story. I actually thought I was going to.
They always are, right?
They're always funny stories, right? We never end up where we think, well, some of us do, but a lot of us don't end up where we think we're going to end up. So I initially thought I was going to do something with international relations. That didn't work out. Then I thought I was going to be a teacher. I was a terrible teacher, and I graduated ultimately with a degree in organizational development, which is the psychology of how companies work together. But I mean, who's going to hire someone right out of school that has no concept of how businesses work? So I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was driving down a highway and there was a billboard about a couples therapy program. And it struck me for some reason. I was like, that's what I want to do, probably based off of my own experiences in relationships. I'm sure there was something much deeper there. But I went home, I applied for the program. It was at the very end of their deadline and I got in, and it's been history ever since. And I'm so glad that I went in that direction because it was my favorite.
Well, relationships are fascinating. I started dating my ex-husband when I was 13 years old. Actually, to be fair, we met when I was 13. We started dating when I was 14, but we might as well have started dating at 13 because we just became best friends. And we were together for 23 years. And relationships always fascinated me from a really young age because it was that curiosity of why does some work and why does some not?
Yeah.
And I also have been certified in not all levels of Gottman work, but in level 1 of their training, and also in their Bringing Baby Home program, which I think is fascinating because I can never decide on which relationship do I want to help people cultivate the most, the relationship to self, to partner, or to child. So I incorporate all three. I can't choose one to focus on, but I think the skills of relationship are ones that are not generally taught.
No.
People think, oh, I love you. So it's intuitive that we know how to actually interact in this dynamic in a way that's healthy, in a way that's fulfilling, in a way that's going to build growth and connection. And hell of a lot easier said than done.
Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of the you should just know stuff comes from when we're in relationships and people disappoint us, right? Because you're in love with me, or you're my parent, or you're my child, or you're my best friend. So you should know how to love me. You should know. And none of us really know how somebody else needs to be loved, of course, unless they tell us. And so many of us just don't have the skills because we're modeled the skills, and the people that are modeling them don't necessarily know the skills.
Yeah. So the Gottmans, I think, are phenomenal. And I actually discovered them early on in undergrad. And I had told myself, if I wasn't with my boyfriend, who then became my husband, if I wasn't with him, I would have gone up to Seattle. Like, I wanted to work with them. I wanted to be in that love lab. I thought that seemed so interesting to scientifically observe what would otherwise feel subjective or non-quantitative information, such as how couples engage. What are some of your favorite tools in the Gottman method that either your favorite to teach or the ones that you think couples most need to hear?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just love that there are tools to offer, because as a couples therapist, I've kind of dabbled in other forms of couples therapy, and there are concepts a lot of the time, but not necessarily like an actual tool that feels structured to give someone.
Yes.
And of course, people are all different. So some people like that more, not structured form of couples therapy. But for me personally, I really like directness and I like tools. I like someone to say, if you start saying it this way, it probably is going to be helpful. And I'm like, oh, great. There's a method to this.
Yes.
I just love the fact that there are tools. I think that learning about turning away, turning against, and turning towards is an incredibly important tool. I think.
So explain that a little bit further. So let's go through some of these. So I know what those mean, but the listeners might not. So turning away, turning towards, turning against.
Yeah. So, and we were just talking about this before we hopped on a little bit, but when people are trying to share something with us, connect with us, they're making this attempt to connect, and they want that attempt to be responded to, right? And what happens a lot of the time in our relationships is the other person doesn't recognize that need for response. And sometimes they do what's called turning away, which I always say is kind of like someone throws you the ball and you turn around just as you're supposed to catch it. You're like, oh, I didn't even notice that you threw me the ball. So that might be me saying, I've always wanted to go to Italy, and the other person is looking at their phone. And then, oh, did you see the news today? So they didn't even catch the ball. The other thing that we do sometimes when someone's trying to connect with us is we turn against. And that's like, I threw you the ball, you caught it, and you slammed it into my face. So turning against is, I would love to go to Italy one day. And you say something like, well, maybe you should learn to save. Or, what do you mean you want to go to Italy? That I don't like Italy. That's a stupid place to want to go. So you kind of
shuts it down.
Shuts it down. And what we were talking about before was this idea of capitalization, which you introduced to my group. I don't know if you have talked about that on your podcast.
I've probably talked about it. John and I have done a couple of episodes together, but I'll say it again because it's a really powerful tool. And I think the roots of it, and I apologize if I'm not accurate in this, but because I learned this from John and knowing his roots in his work, I think it's rooted in some positive psychology frameworks. But capitalization is this idea of building upon your partner's good news. Otherwise, if you don't, it becomes like that turning against where it just becomes deflating. So even if you aren't on board, for example, with your partner's good news, you can pause before showing any curiosity, questioning, judgment, fear, and just in the moment, join and match and meet your partner's emotion, because that makes them feel seen, heard, and validated. So if, let's say, you come home from work one day and you're like, oh my God, honey, guess what? I just got this promotion. Like, I can't believe it. And your partner goes, oh, that's going to mean you're going to be at work more. And then I'm going to be home with the kids. And then you're going to be exhausted at night. Like, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, that would be the opposite of capitalization, or to what you just said, turning against, like just slamming it down. The capitalization would be like, oh my God, that's a huge acknowledgement. That's so exciting. How do you feel about that? Oh my God, I'm so excited to see you happy. And then like maybe a moment later, be like, oh, so tell me how that's going to work for our schedule. Like, give moment and space in between meeting your partner's emotional expression in a way to let them feel that you can share and let that grow before coming in with your questions or your concerns or your fears or judgments. Because over time, if we don't get met with that capitalization, guess what's going to happen? And it happened in my past relationships where I just wouldn't want to share. And then it's going to cause disconnection, because if I'm going to share something exciting to be met with a bottom line solution or a bottom line fear or a bottom line like reality check, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go to someone else to tell my good news because this isn't feeling really good here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what the research shows starts to happen when people turn away or turn against over time. You just stop making those attempts to connect.
Yeah.
You stop dreaming, you stop sharing, you stop asking for help, you stop talking about your feelings because you have decided that the other person isn't really a safe person to do that with. And we can think about that in any relationships. I can think about friendships where if I look at the root of why the friendship ended, it was because of turning against, right?
Yeah.
Like over time, it was just like, wow, you can never celebrate me, or you turning away as well. Like you didn't come to celebrate my baby shower because you think they're dumb. You didn't.
Yeah.
So it's really important that we learn to do the third thing, which is turning towards, which is capitalization, essentially.
Yeah.
Where you're able to be responsive. And it doesn't mean you have to agree. A lot of people will say, but what if I do think Italy is a stupid destination, or I do think we don't have the money? That's fine. It doesn't mean that you are getting online and buying the ticket in that moment. What it does mean is that you show that you're curious about your partner, you're interested in them, you want to share in their joy or their fear or whatever, and that you can, quote, turn towards them, which it might look like saying, that sounds great, honey, let's book the flights. But it also might look like saying, what do you like about Italy? Or when were you thinking of going? Or, oh yeah, we've never been there before. So just giving some sort of response that allows there to be a connection point. And so that's one of my favorite concepts in that.
I love that so much. And, I share an example of a story from years ago, and I want to highlight the same thing and how it can also look from parent to child, because this can show up so easily. And I love doing mindful parenting work because I think part of it is this same ability. Parents have an easy sense that they know better than how their kids are feeling.
Yeah.
And so they shut it down. And, there was this story. What was that?
Like they say, you're just tired, you're not sad.
Right. Or they dismiss it, and they miss the opportunity to actually show some curiosity, tell me more. And, there was a time years ago of this girl who had, 9 years old, lots of anxiety, channeled the anxiety through sports. And the mom was also very anxious. And, the girl comes in from playing outside and says to the mom, my back hurts, and has a look of like pain on her face. And the mom goes, oh no, sweetie, it's okay. You're just fine. And the girl looks from like being in pain to then like confusion, like I feel in pain, but then my mom just told me I'm okay. And I'm going to shrug my shoulders and I'm just going to walk outside. And like that sort of situation, just honestly, it makes my blood boil, because I have so much compassion for this little girl who just got dismissed, who's anxious to begin with. So I now feel like this anxiety has been increased because you just told me what I'm feeling doesn't exist. Now I'm questioning my own internal truth and the messages my body's telling me.
Yeah.
And I think a more skillful approach in that parenting situation would be to say, oh, well, tell me more about the pain.
Yeah,
because if the mom were to be like, oh, she fell at basketball yesterday, now we know the context. So is it worse than yesterday? Is it any better? On a scale of 1 to 10, how bad does it hurt? Do you need some Advil? Do we need to go to the doctor? Do you need a hug? Like getting information is so beneficial to building connection, building trust, building safety in the relationship. Because over time, that girl is going to be like, you know what? My mom shuts me down whenever I say anything. So guess what? I'm not going to her anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that you're tying this to parenting, because I'm sure you agree, like most of the stuff we talk about with couples is the same stuff that we can apply as parents.
Absolutely.
The relational skills of turning towards, or making sure you're not using criticism or contempt or defensiveness, like those are things that we want to use with our kids too, and our friends and other people in our lives. And I talk a lot with parents about that stuff as well, where it's like, can you just sit with whatever they've said their truth is?
Mm-hmm.
You might know better. You might know that the stub toe isn't the end of the world and that they're maybe more upset about it and it's going to stop bleeding and all of that. But can you sit with whatever their truth is, their feelings are in that moment without shutting them down and ignoring them or turning against saying, you're over exaggerating, you're being a baby, get back outside. It either builds trust or dissolves it depending on how you respond.
100%. And that's where I love this framework of mindfulness as the root from what I teach, because, in that moment to me, it's about, can I accept that this is what's arising? Yeah. And I don't have to like it to accept it, but I can at least honor that it's here. And I can go to a foundational tool of non-attachment to know this isn't going to be like this forever. And, the equanimity to be able to respond with a neutral mind and that evenness without labeling it as good or bad. I like it, I hate it, positive or negative, to just say, okay, can I be okay not being okay right now?
Yeah.
And can I just lean into that discomfort, knowing when I lean into the discomfort, it actually quiets it down and makes it smaller versus, fighting it or resisting it, paradoxically makes it grow. And this is what I love in teaching couples or parents, because, we're saying the same thing in different language, right? But it's so powerful.
Yeah, totally. And the mindfulness piece is, I think you're so right. It's at the core of all of it. Like, can you be mindfully aware of what's happening for you so that you can be responsive? Because when we're not mindful, that is the moment that we engage with the text message instead of with the person talking to us. It's the moment where we shut down the idea because we're uncomfortable. We're worried about how much it's going to cost. We're worried that we're not being considered. We're worried that our kid is sick, but we don't want to deal with it because it's scary.
Right.
But when you can just say, oh, okay, I'm uncomfortable with the cost. That doesn't mean anything other than that in this moment.
Right.
I can sit with that and still engage with this other person. And I think that goes into another Gottman skill, which is repair. And I think you need mindfulness in order to repair. So I'm even thinking as a parent, and it's like, we're all going to make those mistakes of accidentally dismissing our kid, even if we don't want to. But if you're mindfully aware, you might be able to later then say, honey, after that happened, I recognized I pushed you away, and that was about me. So I was like frustrated in that moment, or I wasn't present in that moment. And I want to say, I'm sorry for doing that. How is your back doing now? Can we talk about that? And so the Gottmans talk about that with couples, right? Is that we're all going to make mistakes. And when those mistakes happen, when we've turned against, we've turned away, are we able to emotionally repair? And I think that goes back to mindfulness. You have to have an awareness of what happened.
Absolutely.
To do that.
Absolutely. It's why I think mindfulness is the answer to everything. Because in absence of awareness, we stay stuck, right? I mean, we have to even have the awareness to know there's a skill to draw upon in this moment.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Which is why I love Gottman method, because it gives you because you can be mindful, but then you might feel at a loss of, well, what do I do? So this other skills that we're talking about is repair. So it's like what you can do when you have caught that you have turned against or turned away is you can try to sit with, what was going on for you, what that might have been like for the other person. And you can try to emotionally reconnect by owning that, right? A huge piece of it is taking responsibility and saying, I caught that I shut you down. I caught that I ignored you 5 seconds ago, an hour ago, yesterday, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Can we try that again? Or you can apologize, or you can offer affection, or whatever it is, but being able to then utilize that to step towards each other again. On the other end of it, the other person has to be mindfully aware enough to accept the repair.
And that's not always easy to do.
Easy. And then this whole turning against thing comes back into play, because what can happen is couples can get in a back and forth of, I turned against you, or I hurt you in some way. I'm trying to repair. And now the other person is saying, well, I'm going to turn against you now. And I'm that apology doesn't make sense, or I wouldn't have acted like you acted, or I don't care about what you're saying right now or whatever.
It's so much easier said than done.
So much easier.
And, it's actually really fun for me because in my relationship with my fiance, we've been together a little over 5 years, and he's got a private practice. He's got a PhD in educational psychology. And so we speak a lot of the same language, and he works mostly with men. So we do great couples work together. But it's not always easy to put these tools into use in your own relationship, even when you've got the skills and the knowledge and the know-how. And so it's kind of interesting for us because at times we'll be practicing in our own real life, like when we're stuck. And yet it's kind of funny because I'll be like, but you teach this, like you should know better how to do this sometimes in person. And one of the stories that we tell is one of the challenges with the repair attempts is when you need to make the repair and you're not in the mood or ready yet to make the repair, or you're not in the mood or ready yet to receive the repair. Like you're still kind of working through your own stuff. And we had this experience. We were actually traveling and we had 5 magical days in Paris and then flew to Barcelona. And within the first half hour in Barcelona, got really stuck in something so ridiculous. Like he took a bite of food. He took a bite of food while I was in the bathroom. And I wanted him to wait until I got back to like take this first bite of Spanish food together. Like seriously, you guys, it was that ridiculous.
That's so relatable.
But huge. I was offended. Like, couldn't you have waited? I was going to be right back. This beautiful $30 piece of ham on some bread is like looking over the ocean. Like I wanted to share in this moment, and now the moment's gone. And the moment was met with some defensiveness. Like I was starving, like what was the big deal? Well, the big deal is my feelings are hurt. Most issues are that small, right? Those are the small paper cuts. But the challenge was for us, we kept making these repair attempts and they just couldn't be received yet. Like we were both hurt and we were both working through those own internal emotions because we're both highly sensitive. And so it took a couple of days of like repair attempt not being met. Okay, breathe, don't take it personal, don't judge the partner, try again. And we were very compassionate to the process, but we had to be patient with it too and be kind along the way and not continue to let the transgression grow. It was just, we were stuck.
Yeah.
We were super stuck. And there have been other times when, let's say I'm going to make a repair attempt and he's not in a space to receive it or doesn't acknowledge it as a repair attempt. So I will name it in the moment. I'll like reach out, put my hand on his shoulder and be like, hey, love, this is me making a repair attempt. So in case you didn't see the cue, in case you didn't receive that, like I need to like blatantly name, this is me making a repair attempt. Are you open to receiving that right now?
Yeah. Yes. And I tell couples that a lot, like just say what it is if it keeps getting rejected, because they might not be, like you said, your fiance isn't in the space. They might not be in the space to see that because they're flooded or whatever. But can you say something like, I'm really trying so that we can stop fighting. I'm really trying to repair right now. I want to make it better. Like, can you give a verbal cue of exactly what you're trying to do? Because sometimes that can help.
It's huge. And one of the things I'll say to clients is make the implicit explicit. It's like, we can't read our partner's minds. And so, this is something, again, John and I have really worked at, and even understanding our individual processes after one of those paper cuts, right? His process of doing that is to kind of turn inward and to be able to get curious with himself or self-regulate. And he's got to do that through a little bit of withdrawal to be able to self-regulate, to come back for the repair or to receive the repair. And I'm like, but I want to connect. Yeah. So if he withdraws and I want to connect, it becomes like this little cat and mouse. And I have to have the awareness, this isn't abandonment. This isn't rejection. This is his process for self-regulation. So I can have awareness. This is his process of regulation. This is not him rejecting me or turning away from me or not making a repair attempt. This is him gaining the skills to have the ability to make the repair attempt. So in the meantime, I've got to look at my own process and say, wow, I've got my own self-regulation I've got to work on. And let me use this as an opportunity to practice the mindset shift of this is an abandonment. This is him repairing so he can repair. And what can I do to self-regulate my insecurity of having, quote, just felt abandoned? Because like, this is what it looks like for couples.
It does. This is just such a relatable example, right? And it's not, this isn't Gottman based, this is EFT, but it's like having this awareness of your pattern of what does one person do, what does the other person do, and then being able to shift the story that you tell about it. Because the story you tell about your fiance withdrawing is he doesn't love me, he thinks that my feelings are stupid right now, not considering what I need, then that conflict is going to continue in that same cycle. But if the story, which you usually have to figure out outside of the conflict, you're not figuring that out in it. But if you can start saying, you know what I know about my fiance is that when he withdraws, it's because he thinks it's going to get worse if he keeps talking, right? He knows that he'll get defensive. He knows that I'll start getting more critical. He knows that it's going nowhere good for himself. So the way that he tries to help our relationship is to kind of shut up and be quiet for a second so that he can regulate. That's a very different story. The same thing is happening, right?
Yes.
And if you can start having that awareness of the other person over time in your conflicts, you might still have parts of you that are like, what a jerk. They're not talking, but you might have this underlying core feeling towards them of, okay, I know what John's doing. I know he's just lost. And the same with, him. It's he telling a story where she doesn't leave me alone. She just wants to fight. She always finds problems. Or is it she really wants to connect? She's very upset. I make her feel better. She wants to be close to me. Very different stories for the same thing.
Yeah, I will often, I love that question. What's the story you're telling yourself right now? Because it's not about what's arising. It's how you're relating to what's arising that's creating the impact of the situation.
Totally.
It's that meta awareness piece of it.
Yeah. I had this experience with my husband when we were first living together where I wasn't watching TV. I was like reading a book, but the TV was on in the background and he changed the channel. So it was just as little as what your issue was. And I was furious. Like, why would you do that? You didn't ask me if I wanted to watch something with you. You don't care to be with me in this space right now. And I stomped upstairs and he followed me, and bless his heart, he tried every repair attempt in the book. Like, babe, I'm sorry. So he gave an apology. He then was like, you can come down. We can fix it. We'll watch something together. So he tried to fix it. He used humor because when he opened the door, I was sitting on a bed that didn't even have a sheet on it because we had stripped the bed. So it was like freezing cold. So he kind of laughed and made fun of me in a loving way. I wasn't having that. He tried to use physical affection and rubbed my back. Wasn't having that. He was like, I love you. Can we just talk? I don't know what's going on. He tried all of the things, but the problem was the story I was telling myself was all in negative sentiment override, which is another Gottman thing. But I wasn't seeing any of that as repair. I was like, he's defending his actions. He doesn't get how this was wrong. Why is he bothering me? He should just leave me alone.
Yes.
Finally, he used the explicit stuff you mentioned. He was like, Liz, I'm trying to repair with you right now with whatever just happened. I love you. Can we please stop fighting? And then I kind of snapped back into it and was like, okay, fine. I still had my arms crossed across my chest, but it took getting that far. And then I had to start pushing myself to tell myself another story. Oh, he's upset that he messed up. He's trying to fix it. He wants to hang out with me.
Yeah.
About him not wanting to hang out not caring about my feelings. None of that was true. But that initial story really made it difficult to like reconnect.
Yeah, this shit is real. And these are the things, these little teeny things that cause the chasms in couples.
Yeah.
And, without awareness, we're doing this more often than we realize.
Yeah.
And, we're missing opportunities to empathically and compassionately connect with our partners to be able to grow and deepen that safety and trust.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And it's usually the big events are the things we remember. We say we got in this huge fight, or they weren't there for me at this big moment in time, but it's often all those paper cuts that kind of set
yes.
where for whatever reason you've started getting used to turning away. So then, for example, you have a baby, but you just are never emotionally in tune with each other because you're like, whatever, we don't share anymore. We turn away. Or you've gotten in the habit of turning against. So you have this big event and then you're at each other all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And everything is, you're noticing that everything they do is wrong or against you or whatever it is. And that's why it's so important to be able to be really mindful of, am I trying to really be connected with this person? What story am I telling about them? Am I willing? You don't have to like want to, but are you willing to like lean towards the way that they're trying to repair? You're like me and you cross your arms and you get all sassy. Can you put your arms by your side and take a deep breath and kind of be present with them? Because otherwise it can get into some nasty habits and patterns.
Yeah. And one of the things you just, kind of demonstrated for those who, now you guys can see this right now, but like you demonstrated that body language. And, one of the things that I talk about are there needs to be 4 components. And this is not research based. This is just in my own observational, assessments. 4 components to make communication as effective as you're wanting to put out there. It's not just the words, it's the tone, it's the volume, it's the body language. Like if just one of those is out of alignment, it really you can miss the mark on what you're trying to say. Like there was this couple I was doing couples work with, and they were pretty good with the words. They were pretty good with the tone. The body language was distant, but that was fine. But her volume was so turned up. And I know it was a reflection of anger, but it just shut, actually me as a therapist, it shut us both down, her husband and I. And the volume was so out of alignment with the other components, it was hard to even receive what she was saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even these micro expressions or these habits or these body languages impact our ability to hear each other. Because, if one of those is out of alignment, it's hard to get back to what was the intention here.
And some of that is like our neuroception kind of, right? Like, which for anyone listening is the messages we get without even noticing we've gotten them. So conscious, we're not saying this person's yelling at me, so now I'm going to shut down because I don't want to talk. But our nervous system reacts to the things beyond words. So someone can say the right words, you might be saying the right words, but if your body or your tone indicates threat in any way, or how loud you are, indicates
right.
The other person is going to notice that in a split second. It's beyond their consciousness. And then what happens is they feel threatened and they go into whatever their threat response is. So if it's fight, they might say, why are you talking to me like that? I don't want to talk to you anymore. This is how you always get. And if they tend to be flight, they might get really quiet. Like you just said, it sounds like this loud voice for both you and the partner kind of made you shut down, where it's like, this feels threatening. So even if cognitively, and I have to talk to couples about this a lot because people will say, but they know I'm not threatening them, right? Or this is just how I talk. Yeah, intellectually, we could say that. We could put that all on the table and we could say, her voice is just loud right now, or his voice is just loud, but he's saying things, but the body isn't going to respond with that intellectual no.
Right. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I just was saying, I think it's such an important thing to remember.
It's huge. And again, it's those patterns that we do without awareness that cause us to stay disconnected. And so when we know this about ourselves and therefore about our partners, I think we have a greater ability at managing through some of that conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a couples therapist, I'm curious in our last few moments to just make it personal for a second of how do you ever get stuck in that dynamic? Like I know John and I do at times of like, I teach this, but I'm not able to practice this at this moment.
Oh yeah, all the time. I think the only thing that helps us a little bit is that at least we know the tool that we can use when we're ready to use it.
Yeah.
But like you, we're just human beings, and my husband is not a therapist, so you and John might have even more ability to insight through it. But yeah, we get stuck in like, we are both kind of pursuer. So there is not somebody who's like a distancer and pursuing. We're both like, no, I'm right and blah, 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 blah. And my husband's like, but that doesn't make sense. Here's why. And I'm going to keep going on. So we won't shut up, which is really annoying. We're very when we get into fights, like, thank God it's only the two of us that see them because it's annoying. And sometimes I just can't stop myself. And sometimes he can't stop himself. And what does help is that I have awareness of that. Like I'm even saying that to you right now. So I know that, like, we had an argument a few days ago where I just couldn't stop myself. And I was like, I know I cannot stop myself. So I'm leaving my phone because we'll get into like a text battle while we're in the same house, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm going to leave my phone because I know this. And that's why awareness is so important. You don't have to become like this perfect human that's never triggered and never goes into, but if you can say, I know that if this phone is in my lap, I'm not going to shut up.
Yeah.
The only way I can calm myself is if I put it over here and I go take the dog for a walk and get away from it. The whole walk, I'm thinking all the stuff I want to text because I'm a human being.
You're right.
But by the time I've gotten back, I've kind of calmed down, and one or both of us has maybe used another skill to repair, like, oh, I don't want to fight. This is silly. But yeah, I mean, we certainly get into it. And the thing that helps me the most is being able to call myself out for what I know about myself. And then putting a barrier in between the thing that allows me to do that, which is usually a phone.
Yeah, I once heard a great tip of to not even do a text battle, that if you can in those moments to do voice memos, because we lose tone in text and we can soften when we hear our partner's voice. So I think that's also a good reminder too.
Such a good reminder. I love it. We would just be just as annoying by voice now.
But maybe if you heard yourself talk, you could be like, oh, maybe that.
I would have to hear myself talk to be like, shut up, Liz.
Then you can like play them back.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I think I always try to remind people that people in relationships, no matter how aware or skilled they are going to have their thing.
Yeah.
And it's not that you're going to completely get rid of the pursuer, distancer, or the fighty type of thing you do, or the ignoring thing you do. Like you're going to have your thing, but you have to learn how to make that thing harm the other person less and hurt them less.
Yes.
And how to use your own awareness of it to start learning to connect more quickly in it. So it doesn't go as long. It doesn't become as big. It doesn't become a thing where you're forgetting that the other person is a human. Yeah. I like to think.
I know that. Yeah. That's one of the things that John and I would be like, damn it, we're human. Like, I hate that about us.
All the things, but we're still people.
Yeah. And, one of the things too, and we can wrap up in a second, but, to just add on to that point that you just said, I think part of, one of the questions I'll ask couples is, do you know your partner's most sensitive places or their deepest wounds or their deepest insecurities? And it's interesting. A lot of couples can't name that for their partner, but if we can have greater awareness of where our partner's deepest wounds, insecurities, pains, hurts, to have that awareness, so at least we can consciously hold space for that and do our best even if we're being flooded, to not activate that. It takes an extra level of awareness, but if we don't even know the things that are going to make our partner reactive, and sometimes we don't even know ourselves why we're reacting. So it's not always that clean cut and that simple, but it's a great conversation to be able to have, to hold the space of, hey, this isn't about you that I'm hurt. This is something deeper. Like John and I can be able to have the awareness to say, like, is what's coming up right now, is this really about us? Or is this about your ex? Is this about your mother? Like, what's the root of where this wound is coming from? Because then it helps us to detangle when we get stuck, to see more clearly, this is just a wound that I'm trying to regulate through that doesn't have to do with you. And yet it affects you or affects us. And it can take away some of the disconnect or fear of responsibility of what I've caused you.
Yeah, totally. I ask people all the time, what does this feel familiar to outside of
this
relationship?
I love it. Liz, I could talk with you for hours about all of this stuff because this just fires me up. I get so excited. But where can people find you? And what is the best way to connect with you if they want to learn more?
The best way to find me, if you're interested in our therapy practice, is www.abetterlifetherapy.com, or you can find me easily at Liz Listens on Instagram. So those are the easiest places, abetterlifetherapy.com and Liz Listens.
And you guys, she's got a phenomenal Instagram account, so full of valuable content that I know. I mean, that's where I first connected with you. And it's like, oh, she's my people. I just want to know more. I want to talk with her because these are skills that affect every aspect of our lives. And yet we don't always take the time to learn them and to practice them and to hone in on where we get most stuck. Because, to me, the journey forward is all about getting unstuck. And we can journey forward through awareness and through building skills and resources to know, when I am stuck, what do I do?
I love that. It's so true.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today and for tuning in. And I really hope to continue our conversation because I know we have so much more that we could share and just connect around. So thanks so much. It's been great chatting.
It's been so nice to talk. Thank you.
All right, you guys, take care and be well.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat, visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.